Commission says unpredictability of number of IDPs a major hurdle in the provision of humanitarian support to northern Ethiopia. And EU fails to agree on sanctions against Russia. Hello and many thanks for joining us. You're watching Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. Latest joint report by the so-called rights groups Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch on alleged human rights abuses in Walqait lacks impartiality. The remark came when Dina Mufti, spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, talked to the Amharic daily Addis Zaman on a host of current issues. Dina said the research methodology and presentation of findings and recommendations remain unprofessional, adding the report speaks volumes of the affiliation of the so-called rights groups. Ethiopians and friends of Ethiopia residing in European cities have expressed dismay at the recently proposed punitive HR 6600 and S3199 bills. Ethiopians residing in Brussels, the seat of many international organizations, including headquarters of the EU and NATO, marched opposite the US Embassy to speak out against the bills. The following story sheds more light on the demo.
Since last year, Ethiopians and friends of Ethiopia residing in various parts of the globe have held public rallies to denounce undue attempts to meddle in Ethiopia's internal affairs and the media's systematic information warfare. The #NoMore movement was also the pioneer to gain momentum around the globe to denounce US interference. Ethiopia! 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 Those chanting slogans today in Belgium, Brussels, are among the true sons and daughters of Ethiopia to condemn Western nations over their obvious proclivity towards the terrorist TPLF.
Stop! Stop! Injustice! Injustice! Stop! Stop! Sanctions! 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 No more! No more!
We have time and again tried to inform the atrocities by the TPLF group to the international community. The European Union and its member states sent to the Belgian Foreign Affairs Ministry. Currently, we have also been holding rallies to speak out against the punitive HR 6600 and S3199 bills.
No more! HR 6600 and HR 3199 will undermine the current peace progress.
As late as Monday, Ethiopian and Eritrean protesters gathered in front of the White House and other American embassies of various respective countries to call upon the US to respect Ethiopia's sovereignty.
The glaring truths as far as Ethiopians are concerned will be revealed. That explains why we remain determined.
Ethiopia demands justice. USA, USA, stand with Ethiopian people.
Officials from Ethiopia's Afar and Amhara branches of the National Disaster Risk Management Commission say humanitarian support reaching the two states remains far from sufficient. Complaining of scarcity of nutritious food to children, lack of medicines and hygienic materials, among others, the officials urged all states to work aggressively to ease the problem. We have more on that. Take a look.
Millions of Ethiopians living in Afar and Amhara states are directly affected by the war instigated by the TPLF. Many civilians were displaced and suffered physical, mental, social, economic and other injuries following the expansion of the conflict. Respective officials are complaining that humanitarian support reaching the two states remain far from sufficient, indicating that this is a huge burden to coordination and provide basic needs accordingly. They urge authorities to do more.
ቁጥሩ ከ11.6 ሚሊዮን በላይ ህዝብ ድጋፍና የመልሶ ማቋቋም ተግባር ያስፈልገዋል።
The over 11.6 million persons are in need of humanitarian aid and rehabilitation support. More food aid, medicine and hygienic materials are badly needed. The needy are not well provided with basic needs. Insufficient support remains the biggest challenge. The National Disaster Risk Management Commission is doing its level best to fulfill our demands. Transportation problem is also one of the hurdles we are facing.
Similarly, head of the Afar Disaster Risk Management Office indicated that the displaced people currently stationed in 17 shelters across the state are also facing similar problems, mainly shortage of relief aids.
The sweltering heat of most of the time, making it too hard to station lots of people at one place. We are facing scarcity of water, nutritious food to children, lack of medicines and hygienic materials.
It is indicated that more money and medicine, among others, coupled with transport facilities, are needed to better serve the IDPs in the two war-ravaged states up north in the East African nation.
Ethiopia has seen an excessive number of IDPs in recent years, drought and war being blamed for the phenomenon. Despite various efforts by the government and partners to provide humanitarian assistance to internally displaced people, IDPs, and residents of Tigray state, the unpredictable increase in the number of IDPs has hampered humanitarian assistance. The Ethiopian Disaster Risk Management Commission says the government is working with partners to provide assistance to those in need. Johannes Fentahun reports.
Following war with the terrorist TPLF in northern Ethiopia, the number of people in need of humanitarian assistance has risen sharply. Thus, food and non-food aid is reportedly being provided by the government and aid agencies. In addition to Ethiopians in the war-torn Tigray state, there are a significant number of internally displaced people in the Afar and Amhara states. In Amhara state, for example, 11.6 million people are in need of emergency assistance, while in Afar state, there are more than 300,000 people in different IDP camps. Efforts are being made by the government to provide humanitarian assistance to IDPs in all areas affected by the war.
Regarding humanitarian assistance to Afar, Amhara and Tigray, the Ethiopian Disaster Risk Management Commission has been working strongly with partners, namely UN agencies, bilaterals and international NGO, to reach those needy people which are displaced by the invasion of TPLF in Afar and Amhara, so that we are able to reach more than 4 million people, displaced people in Afar and Amhara. Regarding Tigray regional state, as you well know, we have working strongly with partners since the unilateral humanitarian ceasefire, which was declared in July 2021. Since then, we have been using two routes, the Abala route, inland route, to reach all people through bulk humanitarian assistance, and we have been using air transport, especially for very valuable items, such as nutritious food for children and women, medicine, medical supplies, and cash.
Regarding the humanitarian support being provided to various IDP camps, there have been concerns that the amount of the assistance rendered so far remains far too inadequate. Also, there have been serious concerns regarding the support reaching Tigray, the northernmost state under the control of TPLF.
Well, given the nature of the conflict, it is unlike drought, because if you take drought, you can have a constant number of beneficiaries, because once you can reach the number of the beneficiary. Regarding the conflict, the number varies. Most of the time it is increasing at increasing rate. That is the challenge for the government as well as the partners, to have exact number of the IDPs to be supported. That takes time. When you have begun assisting the exact number of the beneficiaries, the number of additional IDPs which have been displaced when you are transporting food commodities to the specific IDP sites. That is the challenge. That is the challenge to capture the exact number of the beneficiaries. In order to correct such violation and deviations, we are closely working with the regional states. And we are monitoring the delivery of the food and non-food supply to the IDP site, through which we are able to bridge the gap as quickly as possible.
Although Ethiopia recently declared an indefinite humanitarian truce, the TPLF remains belligerent, still not showing any sign of peace, the coup reflected on the government's response in this regard.
Since the unilateral humanitarian-centered ceasefire, which was decided by the government of Ethiopia, it is a responsibility of the partners which are working in Tigray regional state. There are 79 waradas, and there are 5 food delivery partners, and there are a number of UN agencies, bilaterals, and international NGOs which are working in the non-food sector. They are responsible because there is no presence of the federal government in Tigray for a while. So that these partners frequently has been submitting delivery report to the government of Ethiopia, through which the federal government is monitoring and evaluate the effectiveness of the assistance to the regional state, so that the partners, especially the food and non-food delivery partners, are responsible for what they are doing, for what they have been working in the regional state, because they have to deliver all food and non-food commodities at food distribution points. There are so many food distribution points across the region, so that they are expected to generate actual report, which shows the number of the beneficiaries and the amount they have provided to the beneficiaries.
Welcome to Somali state of Ethiopia. Beautiful people, it's your favorite village boy, Mr. Ghana Baby, right here in Ethiopia. You know what? This is my 7th time in Ethiopia. Today I decided to go somewhere else, and this place that I am is called Jigjiga. It's a Somali state inside Ethiopia. Bachad? Oh, man, it's all the time full. It's also full, man. So whenever you come to like Jigjiga, the Somali state of Ethiopia, I think this will be your taxi.
Welcome back. You're watching Addis News Hour. The visiting Israeli delegation to Ethiopia has arrived in Gondar town, Amhara state, to support restoration and reconstruction of health facilities vandalized and ransacked by the TPLF. According to the University of Gondar, a roundtable involving the delegation, high officials and stakeholders will take place, focusing on how to rebuild and restore the damaged health system in a sustainable manner. The delegation has been accorded with a warm welcome by Child and Maternal Health Director at the Ministry of Health, Meseret Zelalem. President of the University of Gondar, Asrat Atzadawain, and several high-level government officials also welcomed it upon its arrival at the Emperor Tewodros II airport in the town. The world is expressing concerns over the ongoing Russian-Ukraine war. Russia has clearly found its 24 February invasion of its neighbor grinding into a protracted conflict, some observers saying could resort to more extreme measures. A political expert says Ethiopia's neutral position on the war is exemplary and critical to bringing sustainable solution. Talking to ETV English, Leul Tamrat, an advisor of international affairs, drew an interesting parallel between the events leading to the Russo-Ukrainian war and those resulting in the Cold War in the 1960s. Habtamu Ashagre sat down with the advisor. Take a look.
Today we have an exclusive interview with Leul Tamrat, who is an expert of international affairs who has been residing in Germany. Thank you very much, Mr. Leul.
Thank you for having me.
How about the role of Ethiopia to manage such kind of establishing conflicts between Russia and Ukraine? What kind of game that Ethiopia needs to play instead of the two countries' conflict, and which direction is right for Ethiopia?
Ethiopia should take a neutral position, yes, because since we do not know all circumstances regarding this war, we should not take any sides. De facto, there is, as I see it, there is not really a document which would forbid, as I said, the Americans or the NATO to expand to the east, to the Ukraine.
Let's talk about the recent conflict between Russia and Ukraine. There are a lot of issues raised in this conflict. Some politicians say that this is the beginning of the Third World War, maybe, and others say no, there is no any indication to start or launch the Third World War. But Russia is going to take any measures against the sovereignty of Ukraine, and a lot of people are saying that the conflict between the two countries affects the economic as well as political endeavors in the world. What is your comment in this regard?
I'm not quite sure if the Americans would allow a Russian military presence near the American border, for example, in Mexico or in Canada or in Cuba. Maybe you remember the Cuba crisis in 1962. The Russians, they wanted I think they had also rockets on Cuba, and it came slowly. There was also the fear that the Third World War is coming up. It was in 1962, actually, yes? So it is a comparable situation. The Americans would never allow to have a Russian military presence near their borders. So it doesn't really matter if there's a promise or if there's a legal binding document which would forbid the Americans to expand further to the east, because the Americans wouldn't allow that, and there are, of course, security issues, which I understand, of the Russian nation, that they don't want rockets I think it's only 200 kilometers. I think it's maybe a rocket would reach Moscow from Ukraine within 3 minutes and would destroy everything. So, of course, there are security concerns of the Russian state. The Ukraine should be a neutral state, military. Why should they have American military on their land? It does not really make sense. I would understand if the Ukraine wants to join the EU, which is an economic cooperation. This is understandable, but a military presence on their soil, I don't see any reason for the Ukrainians why they want this kind of presence, because it harms them. You see it now. You see, the war is all about this. It's only about the military presence of Western weapons on Ukrainian soil, which could reach Moscow within minutes.
I really appreciate your commitment, passion, and energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
In business news, the Ethiopian Civil Aviation Authority has given Boeing 737 MAX permission to return to the country's skies as of today, April 11th, 2022. The authority banned Boeing 737 MAX since the March 10th, 2019 crash of an Ethiopian Airlines flight that killed 157 people. But the authority decided to grant a green light for the flight in Ethiopian airspace after Boeing 737 MAX took packages of fixes for safety. Meanwhile, Ethiopian Airlines, Africa's best airliner and the largest aviation group in Africa, has announced the resumption of thrice weekly passenger flights to Bengaluru, India as of March 27th. The airline announced the recommencement of flights after it halted operations for 2 years due to the pandemic. Ethiopian operated its first flight services to Bengaluru in October 2019. The non-stop service between Bengaluru and Addis Ababa is being carried out using a B-738 aircraft. The capital of the Indian state of Karnataka, Bengaluru, is dubbed Silicon Valley of India and serves as the center of technology and innovation. CEO of the Ethiopian Airlines Group, Mesfin Tasso, expressed delight over the development, adding the Star Alliance member will remain committed to high-quality services. An international coffee expo being held in Boston, USA, is said to provide the nation with splendid opportunity to promote Ethiopian coffee to the global market. The expo is also helping create links between Ethiopia coffee exporters and their international counterparts. Shagao Yamatao has the following account.
This year's coffee exhibition is being held in Boston. The event is being hosted in the United States every year since 1992. A large number of Ethiopian coffee producers and exporters have participated in the Specialty Coffee Expo of 2022. Coffee exporters, purchasers, and sellers who came from various parts of the globe looking for quality coffee met with Ethiopian promoters and exporters.
Ethiopian coffee is special taste. It's organic. It's everybody in the world, we know that everybody likes Ethiopian coffee. It's not like the other coffee in the world. Ethiopian coffee is a unique coffee. Ethiopian coffee is the first discovered in the world before everybody.
I've never seen that type of ceremonial coffee drinking, but I think it looks, the whole presentation, it's all just very interesting to me. So I'm definitely always willing to learn more, and I've always wanted to get more into Ethiopian coffee.
President of the Ethiopian Coffee Exporters Association, Desalegn Oljira, said the event is a great opportunity to promote Ethiopian coffee to the global market.
ከተለያዩ አገሮች ከአሜሪካ ብቻ ሳይሆን ከአውሮፓም
Coffee buyers have flocked here not only from all over the states, but also from coffee growing and purchaser countries from Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Many Ethiopians have also been taking part in the exhibition.
ብዙም ሰዎች ከኢትዮጵያ ተሳትፈዋል.
Former Ethiopian ambassador to the United States, Fitsum Aragga, for his part, said new coffee producers and exporters have taken part in the international expo.
ይሄ specialty coffee exhibition ከኮቪድ በኋላ
We can say that this specialty coffee exhibition is the first of its kind after the advent of the coronavirus pandemic. Due to the reform made on coffee export in Ethiopia, coffee producers who have more than 2 hectares of land can export coffee.
ኤክስፖርት ለማድረግ የመጡ ተመልክቻለሁ.
A sideline experience sharing event was held with the view to find ways of better promoting quality coffee from the nation known to have grown coffee Arabica.
Ethiopia has announced that it is developing a system that would better manage subsidies to the economic sector. The country's economy has continued to be dependent on subsidies being provided by the government over the past years. In an exclusive interview with FBC, the Planning and Development Minister, Fitsum Asafa, said the government has been subsidizing particularly the basic commodities, including oil supply. Despite the huge investment in oil, the government has faced a 120 billion birr deficit due to imbalances between the global price and local distribution. The government has also incurred unnecessary expenses due to subsidies for basic consumer goods, she added. Fitsum also said that the government is seeking possible solution mechanisms to ensure that citizens are benefiting from the subsidy. And now take a look at the latest foreign exchange rates.
Enjoys one of the best climates in the world thanks to its geographical location in southern Africa, but also because of its elevation. And even if it does get somewhat hot, and even though English is also an official language along with Shona, another popular park in downtown Harare is Africa Unity Square that we're looking at right now, formerly known as Rhodes Square after Cecil John Rhodes. And it's also a great place to just hang out and enjoy the day. In 1953, Rhodesia became part of the Central African Federation.
3 decades after his death, Thomas Isidore Noel Sankara, a Burkinabe military officer of his time, a Marxist revolutionary, and a Pan-Africanist president of Burkina Faso, is still popular across Africa. Alula Teklemariam takes a closer look at his political profile.
Widely referred as Africa's Che Guevara, Thomas Sankara was a charismatic Marxist revolutionary who seized power in Burkina Faso in a 1983 coup at the age of 33, promising to tackle corruption and the dominance of former colonial powers. He quickly won public support for his modest lifestyle. He would ride to work on a bicycle during his time as a minister and sold the government's fleet of vehicles when he became president, something he is fondly remembered for this memorial dedicated to him.
We are following and looking at what the junta is doing and what they are saying at the moment. We would like for humanity to follow on Sankara's footsteps, and if the junta decides to, they will be honorable, but if they refuse to follow him, they will end up in history's waste bin.
A former fighter pilot, Sankara was considered a visionary. He was among the first African leaders to raise awareness over the growing AIDS epidemic that was ravaging the continent. Sankara also broke away from other African leaders by publicly attacking the World Bank's structural adjustment programs. He also came to improve the plight of his people and not afraid to take on traditional culture practices. He banned female circumcision and polygamy.
He was a statesman who fought for the people, and his brutal death had a disastrous effect on the subconscious of Burkina Faso's people even today.
But critics say his reforms curtail freedoms and left ordinary people in the landlocked West African country Wolserve. On October 15, 1987, Sankara and 12 others were gunned down at a meeting at the ruling National Revolutionary Council. Plastic experts told the 12 into his killing that Sankara was shot in the chest at least 7 times using tracer rounds. The assassination occurred during a coup led by Blaise Compaoré, who would go on to rule the country for the next 27 years. 35 years after he was brutally killed, his memory lives on among many young Africans who consider him a hero who never got to complete his mission.
Kasa Hunchani presented that profile. EU foreign ministers have been meeting in Luxembourg discussing the next round of sanctions against Russia. They're under increasing pressure to include oil for the first time, but there are still clear divisions within the bloc. They've also spoken about Ukraine's urgent request for heavier weapons and the allegation of Russian war crimes. Alula Taklamarian presents the rest of the story filed by the TRT World.
Some member states of the continental body are expressing impatience for the next round of sanctions to include imports of Russian oil worth millions of dollars a day to the Kremlin.
The European Union is spending hundreds of millions of euros on importing oil from Russia. That is certainly contributing to financing this war. And in our view, we need to cut off that financing of war, even though it creates huge challenges and problems for the EU to solve together.
The only thing that I'm happy about is that the European Commission was very clear that we're starting to work on a 6 package with oil options. That means that the work has already begun on bringing the consensus together, and I hope that this time it works.
But despite growing pressures to act, some EU states, particularly Germany, are still reluctant, fearing the economic costs. Yet again, consensus on this increasingly divisive issue seems unlikely.
Nothing is off the table, including sanctions on oil and gas, but today no decision was taken, just a general discussion analyzing the figures.
Foreign ministers did agree to support the pursuit of war crimes prosecutions against Russian soldiers in light of the emerging atrocities being uncovered in Ukraine. The chief prosecutors of the International Criminal Court attended the meeting, as did the Ukrainian prosecutor, joining by video link. The EU promised cash and logistical support for what could be a long and complicated legal process.
And finally, in sports, the Ethiopian